I'd like to begin by pointing something out which may seem obvious, but which countless of our saints have died for. I'd like to point out that you can hear and understand the words I'm saying. I'm speaking to you in a language that you understand. St. Cyril and Methodius, whom we commemorate today, equal to the apostles, Methodius spent 10 years among the Slavs learning their language, learning the Slavic language, and he created the Slavic alphabet for them and translated the service books. They were viciously opposed, incidentally, by Westerners who insisted that all services be in Latin, the holy language, right? Of course, praying in the language of the local people that they understand presupposes that they're praying out loud. But that's another issue for another day. St. Nicholas of Japan established the Orthodox Church in Japanese. Stephen of Perm, St. Stephen of Perm in the 1300s, learning about the language, learning about the land of Perm, Stephen decided to be a missionary in that land, and he immediately set about learning the language. He immediately compiled an alphabet and translated the prayer service books. St. Innocent of Alaska, St. Innocent, apostle to America, he learned the native language of the Eskimo, the Alaskans. He wrote the first grammar for them. He translated the gospel in the church services. He believed, St. Innocent believed in the use of English for North America. He believed in ordaining indigenous clergy rather than importing bishops and importing clergy from a sponsoring homeland. St. Tikhon, an enlightener of North America, he had his icon out the back of the sanctuary. St. Tikhon, as a bishop, he commissioned the services to be translated into English. He believed Orthodoxy is the one and only faith for all Christians, for all Americans. He said this: Orthodox people must care for the spread of the Orthodox faith among the heterodox. The light of Orthodoxy is not lit for a small circle of people. It is our obligation to share our spiritual treasures, our truth, and our joy with those who do not have these gifts. Incidentally, St. Tikhon was not afraid to address the society he lived in, or the political parties either. When the Communist Revolution broke out, he had gone back to Moscow and was elected Patriarch of Moscow, and he excommunicated the ruling political party, the Bolsheviks. He called them to repentance, and he said, "Recover your senses, you madmen! You are committing the deeds of Satan, which are condemning you to the flames of hell in the next world." He engaged the culture both positively and negatively. St. John Kucherov's picture is what has been passed out here. And his picture is worth 1,000 words. On the left is St. John Kucherov when he served in America. And in the middle is St. John Kucherov, the same saint as he served in Russia. Now he enculturalized the gospel, didn't he? Just look at the picture. Do I have to comment on it? Another example would be St. Alexander Hodges. He built a cathedral here in America, planted the faith here in America. When he returned to Russia, he was very controversial. Why? Because he had adopted as his own various American ways. They criticized him for wearing his hair short, wearing his beard short, talking rapidly in the American manner. If you live in America, these are your saints. These are your examples. I began pointing out that I'm speaking to you in a language you can understand. I'd like to also point out that in a certain way I'm enculturalizing my message to you. In other words, I'm presenting my message to you in such a way that you can personally grasp, personally identify with it. Part of my family tree is Cherokee Indian, Cahoga tribe in Missouri. If I came here in a native Indian headdress and loincloth, face and body paint, bones and all, and used Cherokee Indian chants and dances, even if I used English and you understood the words I was saying, even if I sang Orthodox truths about the faith, chances are you would not personally identify with them. Am I wrong? If it may be interesting to you, it may be beautiful to you. It may be something you want to go see time and time again, like art in a museum. But you would never see it as your own. Because you're not Cherokee Indian. You would never see it as something that you could enter into with your whole life. Certainly not something that you could center your life around. And that's the way Americans look at Orthodoxy today. I mean no ridicule of Native American customs or culture. I mean no ridicule or diminishing of any other culture. Not Greek, not Russian, not Romanian, not Egyptian. I mean no diminishing of any culture. But I propose to you tonight that for Orthodox Christians to expect in any way American converts to adopt Greek culture or Russian culture or any culture foreign to the convert is a betrayal of the Church's very mission. Metropolitan Philip is one of my heroes. I just love the bold way that man speaks. He says this, he says, Orthodoxy, despite her past glory, remains the best kept secret in this land. Why? Because of our failure to understand the missionary dimensions of the Orthodox faith. America does not understand us because we're still talking to her as Greeks, Russians, Serbians, Ukrainians, Romanians, etc. It's no wonder then that millions of Orthodox have no presence on the American scene. More than just praying in the language of the people, the Church's mission is to redeem the culture that exists, not to replace it. The Church's mission is to redeem the culture that is here, the local culture, now, not to replace it. But it takes a selflessness that we're just not willing to adopt. It takes an others focus, a concern about the lost, that we're just not ready to enter into. And as a result, we're dying. Our mission is to adopt and sanctify the culture we live in. Orthodoxy is designed to save cultures and nations, to impact the whole world. We take what is good and we consecrate it for Christ. Culture is a good thing, a very good thing. I would define culture, incidentally, as a homogeneous group's manner of living and customs which support their common values. Culture is good. And culture is inseparable from life. There's no such thing as having no culture. Despite modern attempts, especially in America, to dichotomize the spiritual and the physical into all separate spheres and all. But one's culture is to be informed by orthodoxy, to be vivified, to be renewed, to be redeemed, to be sanctified, to be consecrated and focused on Christ. One's culture is to be informed by orthodoxy, not vice versa. One's orthodoxy is not to be informed by one's culture. Orthodoxy is not informed by our culture, just the reverse. Therefore, orthodoxy must be expressed and lived in various ways, many various ways, in every culture of the world. Because this gospel is the universal gospel for everybody. Is that not true? But early Protestant missionary activity, the 1700s and the 1800s, consisted not just sharing the gospel, but changing the people's culture, changing the people's customs and their way of life so that they had to conform to Western culture. And it often, what is the result? How much hatred is there for America and Western European ways in Africa and various African countries? It results in colonization. Orthodox missionary activity is not designed to go and wipe out a culture and replace it with whatever they think is more their own. Orthodox missionary activity seeks to redeem the culture that exists locally, to find what is good in it, to embrace it, to celebrate it, to affirm it, not to erase it, or to impose a foreign culture on it from the outside. There's a myriad of examples, and time doesn't permit me to share them to you, but Christmas was once a pagan holiday. It was a pagan holiday of the sun. That's why our nativity troparion says, by your nativity, O Christ our God, those who worship the stars have now been taught by a star to adore you, the true Son of Righteousness. Another excellent and more modern example of redeeming a culture is putting the church's hymns in Western musical notation, the four-part harmony, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, so forth, so that the church's hymns can be sung by Westerners here, by Americans. The gospel calls us to redeem the local culture, not replace it. Therefore, every nation, holy orthodoxy will be lived differently, uniquely to that local culture. Orthodoxy in Greece has a practice and an ethos that is uniquely Greek. And it should be. And that is good. That's why we call it the Greek Orthodox Church. Orthodoxy in Russia, in Moscow, practice the very same faith we do, differently than the Greeks, or the Ethiopians, or the Syrians. Our mission is to redeem godly American customs and American culture and inform American values with the gospel so as to develop a uniquely American orthodoxy.
Amen.
Not to simply transplant St. Petersburg to New York, or not to impose Greece in America. Father Alexander Schmemann says, the intention of Christianity was not to replace all forms in this world by new ones, but to fill them with new and true meaning. We mischaracterize this Orthodox mission as if Americanized Orthodoxy is somehow erasing or ignoring culture. There's no such thing. Quite the contrary. America is a melting pot. And as Father Basil so rightly pointed out, there are edifying practices from all the old countries which need to blend in ways unique to each local parish. Every local parish is different. And on the basis of that local parish's membership. But our framework here in America, our reference point here in America is American culture, working from within the culture, redeeming this culture. Father Michael Alexa is a leading Alaskan clergyman. He says, the church has always been, in the minds of her saints, in America for Americans. And the church needs to adjust her procedures and mentality, her style and her structures, and accommodate, in order to accommodate this society, this culture, in this land. I've always thought that was a wonderfully radical statement. We must embrace, Father Michael goes on, we must embrace the place, the land, the people, and the culture, and present Orthodoxy as a fulfillment of what was already here. He concludes, Orthodox missionaries in Alaska studied and built upon pre-Christian cultural attitudes, their customs, their foundations, so that Orthodoxy here was enculturated and became indigenous after only 2 or 3 generations. In our creed, we confess the church as one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Our creed says we're an apostolic church. The word apostolic means sent. And every time you say the creed and confess that you are a part of the apostolic church, realize that you are telling yourself that you are sent. And it's no more real, it's all the more real for those of you who came from another country. You are sent. And the purpose you're sent for is not to transplant the old country here, but to preach the gospel and share the light of orthodoxy to the new world, on the new world's terms. Because that's the only way they can hear it. It's the only way they can hear it. Father Thomas Halko says, an Orthodox parish is apostolic because it continues God's mission. As the Father sent me, so even I send you, Jesus said. The word for apostolic in Latin is the word where we get the word missionary from. Our gospel is a missionary gospel. Now, Father Gossios gave me some articles from Father John Mondorf, from Father Alexander Schmemann, and he suggested some other things. So I read some other things from Father Thomas Hockel, and I read some great other things from Father George Florowski. But I want to quote to you my wife, who in my house is a much greater authority. Presbyter Adama says this: We need to stop our status quo and redefine our vision. Without a firm vision, we will perish. And our vision must be to bring the good news to America, to proclaim the truth, to proclaim Jesus.